Hello and welcome to another episode of TGE's Current Read. I am your host, Sam Herbst, and today I have the privilege of chatting with the debut author whose novel, Deep Cuts, is the hottest thing on everyone's lips. Holly Brickley is a pop culture phenom. Her debut, which has been published in the UK, US, and Canada, is soon to hit the shelves in 13 other languages. More than that, the film rights to Deep Cuts has been snatched up by A24 and will be starring Hollywood heavyweights Saoirse Ronan and Butler. Holly Brickley, welcome to TGE's Current Read. Your book excites me greatly.
Thank you, Sam. Thank you so much for that intro.
Oh, goodness. This book. It's original in its own right. A love story for the ages is the tagline, but it's been pegged as tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow meets one day, meets normal people, meets Daisy Jones and the Six. These are all hellishly exciting comparisons. And let's mention your shouts, Coco Melos. I'll read anything that she writes, and I'll read anything that she recommends. What do you feel about these recommendations? Firstly, the shouts and the comparisons to such amazing novels.
Yeah, it's funny that you said hellishly exciting because they were a little like that when they first came in. Like, whoa, that's kind of scary. What if it doesn't live up to those expectations? But yeah, no, the shouts were so exciting. I love Coco Mellors. I love Liz Moore. Cameron Crowe just said he loved it and reached out to me. It's been a dream, and to be compared to those books, Normal People was a huge inspiration for me with this book. So it's a dream, Sam.
I can imagine, and I think people are really tapping into that Normal People vibe of this young love, but not this sweeping romance, just real. This is real, just gritty. People mess up and are not, don't have their shit together type of love where they find each other, but they find each other in a really messy way. And I think obviously Sally Rooney really does that well, but you've done it, and you've done it in a way that brings music so beautifully into the fold. So I'm like, what's the inspiration behind that? And Deep Cuts is a referral to music as well as what happens when you love, when you dare to love. So maybe drop us an elevator pitch for Deep Cuts. What is it about?
Yeah, the music is sort of at the heart of everything because it's about a young woman named Percy who's obsessed with music, but has no real talent for it. And she meets a musician named Joe in college in the year 2000, and they enter into a years-long, like you said, very messy friendship slash collaboration slash romance. And along the way, Percy uses music to make sense of her life. She's one of those people who really feels the songs and kind of interprets them through her lens, and what's going on in her life. So because it's written in first person, there are elements of music journalism kind of woven throughout the narrative. And it really becomes the other love story of the book. There's the love between Percy and Joe, and then there's the love that Percy has and that I think a lot of us have with music.
I think that I find Percy's, we're going to chat more about Percy's character, but I find her journey so relatable. I too was an English major, and I am also doing an MA in creative writing. And just to find that creative voice is a lot about finding yourself. You could be doing a law degree or you could be doing medicine, or you could be doing geology. There's nothing like humanities and the creative arts to really humble yourself and take you to the genesis of kind of who you are, And I think that's what's happening with Percy. You're right. It is like it's more than about Joe. It's about herself. And I suppose that's why it's written in the first person, because you really are feeling this female character, right?
Yeah. And I don't think that when you're going through a love story, when you're experiencing that, you don't stop learning about yourself. In fact, you're learning about yourself as much, if not more, than you're learning about the other person and that experience of love. So it is this Bildungsroman, if not as much, if not more so, than it is a love story.
Yes.
And then there's also the love story with music. So it's kind of doing these different things. I think if you don't go into it expecting like a traditional romance, because it's not.
No, she's falling in love with herself for sure, and she's getting to know herself. And I think that this will touch a lot of teen readers, young adult readers. However, the backdrop is the 2000s music industry. I mean, you're really tapping into a very specific nostalgia, especially for people in my age brackets. Let's call us millennials. So I'm wondering about that. Like, you obviously, as an author, had to have had a really special relationship with music in the same way that Percy does, because I don't think you'd be able to write music the way that she thinks about it in this deeply analytical but deeply soulful way. But then I'm also wondering why this specific era of music made it into your love story.
Yeah, I do have a pretty similar relationship with music as Percy. I do listen to it that way. You're right. I couldn't have written this book if I don't. But it's not the same. Percy is more obsessive. My first love is books. And Percy doesn't read a book that's not assigned to her this whole time, So we are different, but yeah, we have the same taste in music, and the same sort of habits around it. As far as why it's this era, I'm a mom. I was working at this time a full-time job while I was writing Deep Cuts. I wrote it the whole of 2022. I started over that Christmas break, like January 1st, and was mostly finished by the end of the year. And for me to do that with a job and 2 kids, I knew that I had to be having fun. Like, I just went into this, like, I got my MFA 20 years ago. So I took a long break, and partly it was because I just couldn't. I was trying to do these like very, very literary kind of writing. Sorry, I'm derailing us from your question.
No,
but I'll get back to it. I swear, I am answering it.
This is fascinating.
I was trying to do this very literary, difficult, dense kind of writing, and after a long day, you get the kids into bed, you're finally ready to relax. It was hard. It was hard to do that kind of stuff. It was hard to even read that kind of stuff. But I had it in my head that that's the writer I am, partly because I'm very drawn to the musicality of words. And so I love to get a sentence sounding really beautiful. I love to think about the melody of my paragraphs. And so I thought that I had to do this certain kind of writing. But anyway, once I let that go and just started accepting that I also love rom-coms, I also love story, I thought, well, maybe I'll just, let myself write something fun. And fun was not going to be writing about 2022.
So you were like, your head was, MFAs. They kind of put literary fiction up on a pedestal, and I'm not saying it doesn't belong there.
Yeah.
But pop fiction is kind of looked down on in the world of the, literature, when you're really talking about what's going to make a huge difference to society. But pop culture, there's just something about it, and this is so millennials coded. It's got a Spotify playlist, which I love. One article by Inside Hook claims that it might be the novel to bridge the gap between the Gen Xer millennials and Gen Zers. I just think I'm fascinated by your story. I love the digression. I love the fact that 20 years later, I had no idea. You kind of think, oh, you did your MFA and maybe you wrote this in your MFA, or the idea was seeded there. No, 20 years later, and you tapped into fun, and that is what people are looking for. So I wonder what your thoughts are. What are your thoughts on it being a text that bridges the gap between the generations, which are at the moment so divided.
Yeah, that's so interesting to me. I haven't read that article, but I'm assuming it makes instant sense to me, that idea, because Percy and myself are kind of on the cusp of X and millennial. And so I think that there are parts of her that are a little X-y, like that high fidelity music snobbery, even though she doesn't like that. Like, she doesn't want to be a snob because she thinks it misses the point of music. That's why she tries to redefine the term deep cut to be not about obscurity, but like what really cuts you deeply. But then she's kind of got both sides of her. Her journey over the aughts is very millennial. You know, we see all of the move from MySpace to Facebook and the introduction of the iPhone and the economic crash in 2008 kind of levels the playing field for her. Much in the way that it did for Gen Z when they were just starting out with their careers or their college and, you know, with the pandemic. So I do think there are some sort of similarities culturally between what those generations went through. But also then Gen Z is this age.
Yes.
You know, so they're relating to it because this is their life right now. Whereas I think older readers are remembering a little. And Gen Z also loves the indie sleaze era. They kind of romanticize the pre-cell phone era with good reason. And so I just got back from a book tour and I saw all three of those generations almost equally represented in the audiences. Yeah.
So I was going to say, you've just recently ended your US book tour. What was reception like? Did you fill out halls? What questions were people asking? What did people think about this book? How did people feel? Did you have tons of people coming up to you just in tears? What was happening?
Yeah. The halls, the audiences got bigger over the course of the 2 weeks.
Okay.
So that was fun because, you know, I started on pub day and in Portland, my hometown, it was pretty big. But then in Seattle, it was small and then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And there are people who really love it. They really identify with Percy. They feel very seen by her journey, by the fact that it is a feminist novel, I think, but not about this sort of aspirational badass woman who is completely unburdened by misogyny and the patriarchy and just kind of blasts her way through the world. I think those stories are important because we all need those women to look up to, but that's not what it has felt like to be a woman in my experience.
Right, yeah.
And I have a lot of internalized misogyny in me, and I think that was a lot of what women were telling me in those signing lines. And then they just, you know, they're really hot for Percy and Joe.
Oh man, yeah. Listen, let's chat Percy and Joe. I do want to just interject. I'm going to interrupt myself here. That I think, this came out. Is it 5 March? Why do I think 5 March? March 2025. When was your pub day?
In the US, it was February 25th. And then it was like mid-March in the UK.
In the UK. So we're talking post-election America, which has impacted the world. And I really don't want to like harp on this. But this is also why I think this is hitting so well. People just need this kind of reprieve. They need the acknowledgement. You're talking about that internalized misogyny, right? So there's that deep acknowledgement. But at the same time, there's an escapism in this book. And with the music that we're thinking about and this nostalgia. So that's my theory on how and why, apart from it being really well written, of course, and just a phenomenal story. But I do think sociopolitically, this is the role of pop culture, man. I'm really passionate about this, and I think you are too. So let's chat Percy and Joe. Percy and Joe. Okay. Firstly, Percy. She does I know that you said you guys are different, and as a writer, I can also truly acknowledge, like, but she follows much the same education slash career trajectory as you, right? So from English major at UC Berkeley to MFA at Columbia, and then a really interesting career in trend research and branding. That was you guys both. But
Yeah.
it's when you're writing a character, it's just a starting block, I'm assuming, for a much layered character. So how are you guys, in your opinion, as the author and creator of this character, how are you and Percy the same, but how are you totally different?
Yeah. So she started from the parts of myself that I hate the most, which are my jealousy of musicians. I've always loved music. I'm from a musical family, and I just never really had that natural talent for it. And I've just always wanted it so bad, but partly because of the internalized misogyny aforementioned, I just kind of locked myself out of that world very early. Like, oh, it's not for me because I'm not already good at it. I'm pretty good at writing, so that's going to be my thing. And I can't do this thing I love. No way, no how, not happening. But will forever date and only be attracted to men who can play guitar or DJ or whatever. So there was that. And then there's also this kind of critical perfectionist tendency, you know, that feeling of like, oh, you got to be really good to do something. And I just always want, it's partly why it took me 20 years after my MFA to finish a book. It's just, it's got to be really, really good. And the older I got and then raising kids, the more I realized that this wasn't serving me very well, and I really didn't want to pass it on to my kids. So I was just kind of rooting around in my brain, that part of my brain. So I gave Percy those characteristics. And then she kind of developed into her own person as the story went along, in contrast to the other characters who were completely fictional. And all of the events of the book are completely fictional. So different things happened to her. So she became a different person.
Yes.
And by the end of it, I know she's a little obnoxious. I know there are some people on Goodreads who don't like her, but I love her. A lot of women really, really love her. And she made me love myself more by the end of the process.
I love that. Do you know? Okay, so I'm watching Parenthood, with, now I forgot her name, Lauren Graham. Do you know
I love
Parenthood?
that show.
Ron Howard production, and Lauren Graham's daughter in the show. I think she would be really good friends with Percy. And obviously now I can't remember her name.
Mae Whitman, is that it?
I think the actress's name is Mae Whitman. Yeah. I really think that edginess and that, like, the little bit of self-loathing and a little bit of a lot of self-doubt and just trying to find your way back to yourself and to carve out a space in her world. I think that character and Percy would be really good friends if I had to pair them up.
I love that.
So let's chat Joe. I want to chat Joe and I want to chat Zoe before we move on to the structure, because that's really interests me, and it's a really meaty way of kind of delving into a book. But Joe, sexy, infuriating, lovable Joe. We can now see him in our minds as Austin Butler, but was there a real life inspiration for him? And now I'm also starting to wonder if your husband's a musician. Can he play?
My husband is a musician.
Are you jealous of him?
I am jealous of him and frustrated by the fact that he isn't doing enough with his talent that he is so lucky to have.
I feel you.
Yeah. I mean, some of those dynamics definitely went into the book, but my husband is not Joe, despite what some TikTok commenters say. Joe was really fictional. I mean, a little bit of various people I've known in my life, both male and female. I have a friend who lost a parent at a young age, and some of those dynamics went into that, went into his character. But no, he's He's like every boy I've ever had a crush on. He's some of my favorite musicians, a little, James Mercer, a little Father John Misty.
Mm.
He's he's a boy with a giant hole in his life, as Zoe says at one point.
And man, the fact that he seeks out her validation through her criticism is such a real relationship hook, I think. I don't know if I'm using it, but I think it's a hook. I feel like it's a hook. It's not a trend. It's not a trope. I feel like it's quite original, and it's not abusive.
Yeah.
It's really just this interesting hook because she's being honest with him. And there's that hole, and you're just like, ugh, I want to be so angry at you, Joe. But man, you're so damn sexy, and you're hurt, and shut it, I like it.
And her criticism is honest, and it's also making him better at the thing that he really desperately wants to be good at, needs to be good at it in his mind, because he can't do anything else. And so it's important. It's important, and it's fuels their attraction. The attraction isn't just physical, it's on so many levels.
And when you find, especially as a young person, when you find that not just the physical attraction, but this what would you call it? The cerebral attraction to a person, where they think the same as you. And it's like reading something in a book, and you're just like, I thought I was the only person who felt that way. It's meeting a person like that in real life, and you kind of, it's just so juicy, their relationship, and their collaboration is just so beautiful and lovely, and the way that they connect on that music level. We're going to read an extract from it a little bit later, just to showcase how strongly connected these characters are from the get-go. No spoilers, but we are going to get to that. I do think, though, so Joe and Percy are in their own little world. They're in this bubble. But Zoe is such an integral part in their relationship. Zoe, we meet as Joe's initial girlfriend. And she's a bit of a dark horse of a character. I think a vehicle through which you were able to explore sexual diversity, the freedom of college days, another voice and perspective that was introduced outside of the Percy and Joe world and bubble. She gives us a peek into the world happening outside of what is, encompassing Joe and Percy, right?
Yeah, she does. That was very important to me. At the beginning, I kind of came up with her as a way to plug them into the world, because I knew they were going to be so myopically focused on music, and I wanted her to be plugging them into the world, and also like kind of a voice of the present. Because we used to say so many things back then that would be politically incorrect now. So she allowed me. I remember that girl back then in college who was like talking about the patriarchy, and we were all just like, nah, whatever, shut up, She was just way ahead of her time.
Yes.
So she started that way. And then once I realized I was writing this like Bildungsroman about Percy finding herself, and it wasn't just going to be a love story, then I knew I had to have female friendship be a big part of it, because that was such a much bigger part for me of finding myself than my romantic relationships were my female friendships. So I kind of, you think she's gone at some point in the story, and she comes back as a really close friend. And then I kind of plugged some things from some characteristics of my own friendships that have been really important to me in her. I have this one very bossy friend. I love a bossy friend.
Oh, well, you gotta love Zoe. She's quite strong. She's quite forward. There's a moment, I won't spoil it too much, but the moment where she and Percy are in the club, and Joe's, well, they're there to listen to Joe play, and Zoe says something to Percy, and it's just like, what? Where is this going? And at that point in the book, you don't know that Zoe's kind of going to stick around the way that she does.
Yeah.
So I really love the way that her character developed. And at the risk of spoiling any more, I just want to put out, like, Raj, he broke me, man. That poor guy.
No.
I have a soft spot in my heart for Raj. I really do. And that's where I'm going to end that. We'll leave that for the readers to explore and the book clubs to shake their fists at. Let's talk structure, because this is really interesting. Beyond this, you've got this love story, you've got this Bildungsroman, you've got the Bildungsroman and the one-day-esque love story of these characters. But you've plotted each chapter against the backdrop of a song, a deep cut, or a lyric that the Percy relates to, or a song that Joe and Percy write together. And that's kind of all mixed, but it's really interesting to me. I love that you went there, and then that's how you kind of explore music and the character's journey through that. So let's start with a deep cut. To clarify, a deep cut is traditionally a track that's well loved but not well known, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it was also very clickbaity. I'm a Taylor Swift fan.
Me too.
There was an Australian article that said that Mirror Ball was one of the deep cuts that have really impacted you. But the whole novel is filled with deep cuts throughout that, and not just in the aughts, right? So the novel spans from 2001, 2008, right?
Mm-hmm.
But the deep cuts, Percy goes way back because she's got such a deep love for music. So, I mean, there's so much that I've discovered and rediscovered as well throughout this process. But most of the songs are from the 2000s. We call them the noughties. You call them the aughts.
Yeah.
So talk me through this process. Like I say, some of the songs are lyrics. Some of the chapter heads are lyrics. Some of them are songs that Joe and Percy write together, so it's fictional. But then there are some real song references.
Yeah, so every chapter is a song title. That's consistent, and it's a song that features in the story, and is sort of pivotal for Percy having some sort of epiphany, or facilitating a party, facilitating connection. It's kind of a pivotal song in the chapter. But yes, some of the songs are fictional, so they're the ones that they're writing together. How I found them was really a process that was led by the story. So I started with Sarah Smile. That was the first thing I wrote, chapter 1. Just an idea I'd had about a song, this perfect track versus perfect song, you know, something Sarah Smile is.
Sarah Smile by Hall & Oates.
By Hall & Oates, yeah. And then once I kind of had that and I thought it would be a good chapter title, I mean, that happened right away. Then I came up with the idea of the structure, each song for a chapter, which is not something that hasn't been done before. But in a novel, I thought, oh, this could be interesting. It just felt right away. And then I would just let whatever I needed for that chapter in terms of the story, I would try to find the right song, which often came very naturally to me, sometimes didn't. There's The Weakness in Me by Joan Armatrading was one. I had that chapter written, and then I had like insert song here, like for the longest time. And I was just obsessively flipping through my record collection and telling Alexa next. And then when I found that one and I wrote it into the story, it actually made that pivot much deeper, you know. So the songs were helping me. They weren't just these little like puzzle pieces I was plugging in. They were actually shaping the story as I went.
Okay, so never remind me now, because never is a promise. I thought that was a lyric from one of the songs that they discuss.
Nope, that's a Fiona Apple song. It's on Fiona's
on the
debut album.
playlist. Yes.
Yeah.
I thought it's a lyric pulled from that song. So I mean, my music education has also been broadened to the Nina Simone version of Is It Like a Woman?
Mm-hmm. Just Like a Woman, yeah.
Just Like a Woman, yeah. And Percy's take on that, also no spoilers, but so good. I loved the exploration of character through music. It was really unique. I know that I keep banging on about it, but it's so good. And anybody reading this book has got to you got to get the Spotify playlist, or it's on Apple as well. I'm listening to it on Apple. Mm-hmm. It's there. Yeah, it's all there. It's on Apple. Does Percy's writing trajectory, because she starts writing for Zoe's zine, and it's like the beginnings of zine culture, right? During that time. Did you do stuff like that? Were you a music critic or a music journalist? Did you
I was not.
Okay, so that's what you guys.
I'm very flattered that people are so surprised to hear that. But no, I just consumed a lot of that stuff. It's
really good. And I think as well, what's really relatable is in the very beginning when Percy starts writing for Zoe's zine, which is supposed to be about punk, right?
Yeah.
But she kind of just takes on the punk culture of it and writes about any of her own music, because Joe kind of sells Percy to Zoe, saying she really just knows what she's talking about when it comes to music, and she's fascinating to listen to. And as you see this trio's friendship develop, they kind of lean in towards each other, and Joe and Zoe have this fascination, which I think Percy feels. Percy feels like, hey, they're really into what I'm saying. So then she writes and she gets really personal, and we all know that. I think maybe I can relate to that feeling as a journalist of vulnerability when you do start veering up, you break the fourth wall essentially, and you insert yourself a little bit into the story, which goes against journalistic tendencies. But when you do that, you feel really raw and vulnerable. And there's one chapter where she starts writing and scraps a piece midway through each. And I was like, that's a really clever way to build a character's history without going, when I was 8, and I have a brother that, da-da-da-da-da-da. It was just really craftily done. And at the same time brings in that zine culture. I really, really enjoy that.
It's so funny how that came about. So it used to be, I had a full draft of this book that my friends had read and everything, where it was just when I was 8 in those chapters. It was just a solid 2 flashback chapters. There was the Neutral Milk Hotel song and the Beach Boys song. There were 2 flashback chapters back to back. And then there were no other flashback chapters in the whole book. And I was always felt a little weird about that. Like, is that okay? And then I heard somewhere on a podcast that agents hate flashback chapters, and I was trying to get an agent. I had already sent this manuscript off to a couple. And so I had that idea to write it. I was like, it always bugged me that we never saw much of what she did for the zine. So I had that idea to rewrite those flashback chapters as her zine articles in fits and starts, and I was so pleased with how it turned out.
It's so relatable as well, because how many things have, like, you as a writer, I mean, certainly my journalism work and my creative writing work, you like, it fits and starts, exactly that. It's just, okay, no, scrap that, this is too personal, or this is not what I really want to say, or this is not how I really want to get into it, or how you start with one hook or lead and you just have to kind of remesh it. It was really crafted done. So I mean,
and for the record, I don't think agents actually care about, like, I think flashback chapters are fine.
I mean, they have their role, but I think this was a really good way of bringing in Percy's history without I don't know, because who's she talking to? You got to think about that throughout the novel as well. And she is, it is, the whole thing is pretty much a flashback, because often she'll be like, back then Zoe said XYZ about feminism and I didn't really understand it, but thinking back, now I do. So every now and then that's peppered in there where you're like thinking back. So you know that she is looking back at the trajectory of their relationship and about her growth, I suppose.
Yeah.
I want to ask the Spotify playlist. We keep mentioning it. I'm obsessed. What is your favorite track on the playlist at the moment?
Oh man, these are some of
quickly.
my favorite songs ever. Oh God, probably surf. My so
It's like, would you rather tell me which one of your daughters is your favorite?
Yeah, seriously, it's almost that bad. It's almost that bad for me to ask me this question. Okay, I'm gonna go with Surf's Up by the Beach Boys, which is a late career Beach Boys song. Well, not, they have had an afterlife, but yeah, it's a really beautiful Brian Wilson song that makes the hair on my arms stand on end.
It's not my favorite song on the playlist, but I love that you brought in the No Doubt song, Total Hate 95. Just because I had never heard it before. Every Day by Buddy Holly, so good. It's one of those that you forget about. But I have to say, the one song that I keep coming back to because I had forgotten about it was the Modest Mouse song. Where is it now? Gravity Rides Everything. Yeah. I just stopped. I had my 4-year-old with me. Lying next to me while I was reading, and I was just like, Noah, listen to the song. Just feel it for a second. And then when I showed my husband the playlist, he was like, no, this is cool that Neutral Milk Hotel is on here. So he's also sold on this playlist. It's a really good playlist.
Thank you.
And it makes for an Outcast. That really is a 2000s like.
Oh, yeah.
That's like,
I always knew that would be in this book. I was like writing my way to that song. The whole first half, I was like, I gotta make it to the summer of Hey Ya.
Yes, I mean, even if it's not your genre, like, and it wasn't my genre, but I was out partying. I think I was 18 when it came out, and I mean, you're shaking it like a Polaroid picture. Everybody our age knows to do that when the song comes on. It happened exactly what happens to the characters in the book when Outcast plays is what happened to us. It's
everyone. I think everyone that summer felt that way about that song. It was amazing.
Absolutely. So yeah, you have me hitting up Modest Mouse again. You have like you're breaking up Tortured Poets department for me. You're taking me out of that reverie because it's been a while now. It's like it's time to get back to the real world. And speaking about the real world, we can't not talk about A24. Your Deep Cuts was optioned like really quickly. It came out like yesterday. It was March and late Feb in the US. But I mean, what on earth? What an incredible cast, set to play, the film adaptation. What is your involvement? What can you tell us about the film adaptation? It is film, right? It's going to be a film. It's not going to be a series.
It is a movie, yeah. It is a movie. It is, theatrical release with A24. I'm the executive producer.
Congratulations.
I'm not writing the script because the director, Sean Durkin, who did The Iron Claw and Martha, Marcy, May, Marlene, he's a director who writes his own stuff. So, which is great. And because I wanted to write my next book anyway, so I'm moving on, but he's very cool guy. He was at these shows. He's very interested in my story and sticking very close to the book. So I don't know, man. I think it's gonna be good.
It's gonna be amazing. I'm so excited. Do we have a timeline yet? Like what? How long do readers have to wait?
Yeah, currently they're saying they're gonna shoot early next year.
It's gonna be so exciting. I wonder, do you know if there's any talk about Joe and Percy's songs making it to production a la Daisy Jones and the Six?
Yeah, there is talk of that. Okay. They will be written. Bay window will live.
I am very excited. I'm very excited. Okay. And you say you're working on something else. I always know that like it's touch and go with writers to be like, okay, you've just done this incredible, amazing, big thing. What's next? What else are you going to give us? You know, it's very onesie, but do you mind? Are you working on anything else?
I am. I don't quite have my pitch down, but it is another love story. And it's about a really opinionated, slightly obnoxious woman. So I guess that's my thing. But no music really. It's all set in contemporary times during a really intense heat wave. And she and this man kind of have to take in these evacuated children. They create a found family, but there is a religious divide between them. So this kind of dealing with some meatier contemporary issues, but still lots of banter. And I think the sort of the big-heartedness of Deep Cuts is all there.
And I like the edgier women characters. I love the way you do them. I don't think it's something you should shy away from because Percy's amazing. She doesn't come across as like annoying, you know. She's not like in your face. I think she thinks that of herself.
Yeah.
You know, and you kind of just want to shake it out of her and be like, "No, you're fine." So maybe that's what I'm saying to the author. Like your characters, they're great. I love them.
Yeah, thank you.
So
it's so fun.
It is fun. It is fun, and I'm so glad you're having fun with it, and that we get to experience it as your readers. So keep having fun, Holly Brickley. I want to ask you if you can please read for us from Deep Cuts. It's the first night that Percy and Joe meet, and they've already had a conversation. And Joe comes back for more, and I think it really sums up how closely the two connect from the get-go. So Holly, is there anything else that you want to say about this part before you get started?
Well, they had talked initially about the song "Sarah Smile,"
yes,
by Hall & Oates. So that comes up again, and then he comes back. We kept talking and couldn't stop. Time stretched like pulled taffy, dipping and clumping. We took turns selecting songs that the jukebox actually miraculously played. The overlap in our musical tastes grew wider and wider until it began to seem infinite. Indie rock and Elephant Six, the entirety of the 60s, no guilt attached to pop pleasures. When we finished our drinks, he disappeared for a few disorienting minutes, then returned with a teeming pitcher and 2 fresh glasses, and we were right back in it. The booth was like its own room, enclosed on 3 sides by a wall and the high wooden backs of our benches. The rest of the bar, dark and murky, swimming with normal humans, we would observe occasionally, as if from a great distance. Casually, I invited him to the party, but he said it was Zoe's dad's birthday. "Do you know Zoe?" he said, leaning over the table, his high eyebrows relaxed now. No. Zoe was a tasteful punk, rail-thin, with narrow hips, baby doll tees and platforms, bleached hair with black roots. They had arrived together that fall as a fully formed unit, transferred into our junior year cohort from some suburban college, both poli-sci majors. I think he did a quick survey of the bar crowd before looking back at me. I think Zoe and I might be a perfect track. We need that context, family, friends, our hometown. I don't know about the bones of our relationship. My initial response to this was guilt, as if whatever issue he had identified with his girlfriend was somehow my fault. Then I felt a stab of panic at the possibility of him being available, which I knew would turn this scenario into something I was incapable of handling. So I backpedaled. A perfect track isn't nothing. A perfect track can be everything. Sarah Smile was killing you before I started my blathering. He nodded, running his thumbnail over a pair of initials carved into the wooden tabletop. True, and I can't imagine my life without her anyway, so he patted the table conclusively. This relieved me enough to ease the panic. I leaned back into the corner of my side of the booth. He leaned into his. I stared at the remnants of beer foam clinging to my glass and thought about his metaphor, a relationship as a perfect track. There was something so delicious about it, the way he'd made my little take on a pop song so emotional, so very real world. I nursed it like a hard candy.
So you were saying in literary fiction you didn't want to labor on your words, but I mean I've underlined here, and throughout the book there's a lot that I've underlined. But time stretched like pulled taffy dipping and clumping. And then the last line of this section, I nursed it like hard candy. There's also a part later on where she's talking about an Erykah Badu song. And where her friend Naomi, we meet another friend of Percy's, and Percy's trying to figure out about this Erykah Badu song. And so that's what the part that you just read was that beginning of that love story. But I really want to end on where you really start to see that this is a lot about Percy's journey. And think about the Erykah Badu song. It could be about being a solo artist in a way, shedding the baggage of needing other people. And then Naomi said, well, in the end, it's about finding a guy, right? And yeah, just I found it deeply disappointing, even as I related to an awful seed of truth inside, that all my attempts to grow, to find creative independence and purpose were at least partly in service of becoming more lovable. Mic drop moment for me. And I think I think for anyone, it's a bit out of context for those listening right now, but I really had to bring it up that, I mean, I really think that there's a lot that pop culture has to offer the genre of literary fiction. I think that you've cut a really beautiful divide between the two genres and created something deeply, deeply enjoyable in deep cuts. Holly Brickley.
Thank you so much, Sam. This is just so moving to me.
Well, keep at it. Keep searching for the fun, and I cannot wait for your next book. Almost as much, well, probably as much as I can't wait for the A24 adaptation of this. To anyone wanting to pick up kind of the most anticipated pop fiction novel of 2025, highly recommend. Deep cuts, and probably without all of my doggy ears and my scribblings, but yeah, I really highly recommend it, and I just want to thank you for joining me on TGE's Current Read and letting me pick your brain about your writing process and your love of music and your love of writing. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me, Sam.